Hello and welcome to the CPA Ontario Practical Experience webinar on how to get ready to prepare and report your work experience in PERT. This webinar is developed for CPA students in the EV, the Experience Verification route. Students in the pre-approved program route will not find this webinar useful to them. Students must report both technical and enabling competencies in PERT. However, this webinar will only focus on technical competencies. In the resources section of this webinar, there is a link to a supplemental video on how to report enabling competencies. There are also 3 handouts for you: the PERT user guide for experience verification students, the guide to completing experience verification route experience reports, and a copy of this presentation. Throughout this webinar, we encourage you to ask questions through the Questions tab. There will be pauses throughout the presentation in which some of your more common questions will be answered. Otherwise, our team of experts will be responding to you directly. If we do not answer your question within the time period of this webinar, we will be responding to you through email. I will now hand over to your presenter for today, Fan Du, CPA, CA. Fan is the Director of the Employer Relations Department here at CPA Ontario. She oversees all practical experience reporting and assessments, and with 8 years of experience working with CPA Ontario, she contains a wealth of knowledge in the practical experience field. Over to you, Fan.
Thank you very much, Beth. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm happy to take you through the process of getting ready to prepare your very first experience report in PERT. So I'm going to break it down in 6 steps. And keep in mind that might sound alarming right now, but you will probably not have to go through all 6 steps in your subsequent report. So on your first time, this is probably a process you want to follow to make sure that you're understanding all the requirements and what you need to do. So I'm going to take you through each of the 6 steps together. Okay, so we're going to start with the very first one, which is to review the CPA experience requirements. Do you know what those requirements are? So that's what you wanted to find out. And then step 2 is to understand the competency categories. How many categories are there and what are they? So we're going to take a deeper dive into step 1 and step 2 at this point. Some of the concepts that I'm going to be reviewing with you is the concept of core, depth, and breadth, as well as progression and proficiency levels. All of these things are very important for you to understand before getting started. So as you can see on this chart, we have a technical competency area, which is the circle, and then to the side you'll see enabling competencies. So the first one I want to go through is depth. So with depth, this is under each of the 6 competency areas, there are sub-competencies within each one. So for you to be able to demonstrate depth on your job, you will need to be demonstrating all of the sub-competencies in that particular area. On the screen right now, you'll see finance as an example. So here you want to be demonstrating all of the 3 sub-competencies under this particular area, and at least 2 of them you want to get to something we call a proficiency level 2. We'll talk a little bit more about what proficiency level means, but basically level 2 is when you are at the level of an entry CPA. Okay, so this is when you're ready to be a CPA. So definition of depth then is that you get exposed and you're demonstrating all of the sub-competency in a particular area, and you have to get at least 2 of them at a proficiency level 2. Then we're going to move on to what a core is. So for a CPA, the A in CPA is basically accountant, and for that we need you to be really strong in what we call your core areas. So this will be either financial reporting or management accounting. As you can see, under each of these areas there are 4 sub-competencies, so 8 in total. For a core, to meet that definition, you need to be able to demonstrate at least 3 of those sub-competencies at a level 1 proficiency. Now, those 3 sub-competencies could be any combination between financial reporting and management accounting. So in our example right now, you'll see 2 level 1s under financial reporting and 1 under management accounting. But it could easily be 3 under management accounting and 3 under financial reporting, or 2 under management accounting, and 1 under financial reporting. So it could be any combination as long as you're getting at least 3 of those sub-competencies being demonstrated, and at least 3 of them have to be at level 1, or I should say all 3 of them have to be at level 1. Okay, so that will be core. Now, I talked about depth previously, and I had picked finance as the depth area, but you can easily also meet the definition for depth under either financial reporting or management accounting, and you can also satisfy the definition for core. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the same competency area could meet the definition of depth as well as core. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is breadth. So here, you have to, so overall, you basically need to get 8 sub-competencies demonstrated on your job, and at least 4 of them have to be at a level 2, and the other 4 at a level 1. So we had gone over initially depth being in finance, so you can see that there are 2 level 2s there already. And then we went to core and we looked at financial reporting and management accounting. There you see that there was 1 level 2 and 2 level 1s. So you're actually missing 1 more level 2 and 1 more level 1 in order to meet the at least 8 sub-competency as the exit requirement. So you can see that we got the last level 2 in audit and assurance under internal control, and the other level 1 under strategy and governance. So in totality, you're meeting breadth now because you're able to get coverage for all of those sub-competencies at the right amount of level 2s and the right amount of level 1s. So before I go any further, I know some of you might be a little confused at what I have reviewed. So I'm going to see if there are any questions about depth, breadth, and core before I move on. So Beth, do we have any questions on those areas?
Not at this stage, but keep sending them through.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to keep moving now. So this screen was really more a summary of what I just said before, which is, as you can see, there are 20 sub-competencies in total. And again, you only need 8 out of those 20 as the minimum requirements. And again, you have to make sure that those 8 is meeting depth, core, and breadth. Okay.
We do have one question, Fan.
Okay.
So how long does a student need to perform the competency to gain the successful competency?
Okay, so I'm going to go through that in my next 2 concepts, which is progression and as well as the proficiency level. So let me go through that and then we'll answer that question. Okay, so now I want to talk about progression. So basically, we require that students, when they're gaining their practical experience, need to not stay at the same level as they're doing their work. They need to be showing progression throughout their practical experience term, okay, so which is about 30 months at least. And what this means is that the way we see it is that students will start off, really at what we call an early stage. And so the work they do at this point is really more central around retrieving and comprehending information that they need to do their work. So some of the things that they would be doing, if you were to ask them to use action words to describe what they do, they would typically say that I'm explaining, I'm applying, I'm recording, or I'm calculating. So that type of work is what we would say would be really between level 0 and level 1. Then usually after some time in this area, you would progress to what we call the analysis stage. This is where you're getting into the level 1s, okay? So here, when you're asked to describe what you're doing, you are actually probably going to say, I analyze, I identify, maybe I do some research, or I prepare something. Okay, so this is more, you're getting into analysis type of work. You're looking at different options, different alternatives, and you're analyzing that type of information that you have. Okay, so this is where you're at level 1. Then you'll move on to what we call knowledge utilization, or level 2. So here you're really making, you're using the information that you've analyzed, and you're really coming to a conclusion about what the analysis that you've done, and you're making a decision about it, or a recommendation. Okay, so you're really using decision-making, problem-solving, recommendation, and you would be saying, I evaluate, I develop, I review, or I advise. Okay, so those would be the words that you would use to describe the work that you're doing. So you would go through this type of progression from the beginning at day 0 all the way to the end of the 30-month at least. Sometimes it could take you a little bit longer, which is completely okay. Now, sometimes if you're in a rotation, so i.e., you might only spend 12 months in a particular area focusing on specific tasks in those areas, you may be able to get from 0 to a 1 to a 2 much faster because you're constantly just working on that small piece. But if you're doing work that is more comprehensive, so it requires it's a variety of different tasks that you're working on, it might take you longer to actually go from a 0 to a 1 to a 2. The key to remember is that you need to be consistently at this level before you can say that you're at that particular level. So you can't just say, okay, I arrived at a decision or a recommendation one time, and then that means you're at a level 2. You should be consistently doing that before you can say you're at a level 2. Okay. So the other concept, the other way of looking at it is this way, through more like a matrix. So we also not only look at the nature of what you do, but we also have to look at the complexity of the task that you have, as well as how much independence you have in doing that particular task. So as you can see here, as you move out in terms of going from low autonomy to high autonomy, and going from a low complexity task to a high complexity task, you're moving from a level 0 to a level 2. So if a task is really low in complexity. So when we say low complexity, we're talking about basically you're looking at something that only has one factor or one element or maybe two that you're looking at. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. And if you're able to do that task independently, that would still mean you're at a level 1 and you haven't quite got to the 2 yet. You really need to have a really complex task as well as doing it independently to get to the level 2. And so a complex task would involve multiple elements that you have to keep track of or understand their interrelationship between. And based on understanding all of that and seeing how it impacts each other, you're able to then to come to a conclusion or a recommendation on that. So that's where you would get to the level 2. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that when we say you having high autonomy or being independent in terms of doing something, it doesn't mean your work is not being reviewed by your supervisor or your manager. So that is still being done. However, you're not going to get a lot of questions back from your manager or supervisor about the work that you've done or the fact that you may have to go back and redo some of the work that you did because you've had missed something or you didn't address something. So, so if you're getting little to no review note back, then that counts as high autonomy. Okay. So I'm going to pause again and see if there are any questions.
We do have some questions, and some of them do relate back to the core depth and breadth fan. So I'm hoping you can answer these as well. So we have a general question of what happens after the 30 months if I don't achieve the breadth requirement?
That's okay. So there's no requirement that you have to finish in 30 months, unless, of course, you're in a pre-approved program. If you're in experience verification, you really have all the time that you need to do it, provided that you finish all your practical experience requirements in a 7-year period. Okay, but yeah, so you just keep going and you just keep, seeing what you're missing and making sure that you talk with your manager or supervisor to get exposure to those areas that you need.
Thanks, Fan. And another question about the competencies. If we've already achieved some competencies through earlier experience, do we need to demonstrate them again? So earlier experience being through maybe a pre-approved program experience or prior experience.
Yeah, prior experience or a report before, because you do have to keep in mind we do want you to keep reporting your experience throughout the whole practical experience term, and that's how we measure that you are actually making progress, because that is one of the requirements to get your experience recognized. So what I would say is that if you submitted that report in and it got assessed and it was recognized that you got that particular level, what we do is, as well, at the end, when you're all done everything, we do take another deeper dive and look over your entire file just to make sure everything makes sense in totality. So I would recommend that you continue reporting if you're continuing doing those particular activity, because we do want to see that you're progressing. So you might have more examples to further support that you are at a level 2. So we want you to continue doing that. But later on, I'm going to review how to make sure that you're focusing on the right competency areas. So I definitely don't want you to be submitting a report where you're reporting on all 20 sub-competencies. But let's say your job is to prepare financial statements, and you will continuously do that over the 30-month of time over your practical experience term. Then yes, I would recommend that you continue reporting on the progress that you're developing in terms of preparing financial statements.
Thank you. Can you take a few minutes to talk to us about prior experience? What is prior experience and how do you report it?
Okay, so prior experience would be anything that is before your PER effective date. Your PER effective date is the date that you have gone into PERT and you've got a mentor and your job has been pre-approved to say that it's meeting the entrance requirements. And so then we set that date, so in PERT, and you'll see it in your profile that says PER effective date. Any experience you have prior to that date, you will report it to us in a prior experience report. So basically it's the same experience report, except you can choose the category to say this is a prior experience report. Anything after that date counts as your current experience.
And then one last question about the technical competencies, core, depth, and breadth. So you said that depth and core can be counted with the same sub-areas, but what about core? What about breadth, depth, breadth, and core? Can they all be used the same way?
Yes. So for instance, if I just go back to that wheel, give me a sec. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to actually take this one. So if your role, let's say it's a financial analyst, because that is depending on what you do as a financial analyst, because we do see a broad range of responsibilities for a financial analyst. But let's say that your job responsibility fits into the 4 sub-competencies under financial reporting as well as management accounting. And so there's 8 sub-competencies there in total. And then of those sub-competencies, you're able to demonstrate 4 level 2s and 4 level 1s, then yes, you would meet all the exit requirements, which is the 8 sub-competencies, which is 4 at a level 2 and 4 at a level 1, which is also meeting depth because you have exposure to all the competencies within that particular competency area, whether it be financial reporting or management accounting. And you're also meeting core because it's financial reporting and management accounting, where you're demonstrating at least 3 sub-competencies at a level 1.
Thank you. And one final question before we let you continue with your presentation. We have a very good question about level 0, 1, and 2. So a student's asking, they're already performing tasks at a level 1 or 2 level. Do they have to show that they demonstrate them at a level 0 or a level 1? So for example, they're performing the task at a level 2. Do they have to demonstrate that they perform at a level 1 and a 0 before they perform it at the level 2 level?
So no. So I'm assuming you might have already had some experience in that particular role, so that as soon as you start reporting, you already seen that you're meeting the definition of a level 2, which is perfectly okay. As long as you're able to explain how you're demonstrating at a level 2 and make sure, and I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail subsequently, is that make sure you're picking examples that illustrate that you're definitely able to consistently perform at a level 2.
Thank you, Fan.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to continue. Those questions are awesome, so thank you. So the other things I wanted to just wrap up with proficiency level is that, typically what we do see in the first 12 months of employment, the students would usually be at probably a level 1, maybe 1 level 2. So keep that in mind that, the reason we do give you 30 months is because we do think it does take time to master skills. And when you're at level 2, you are at an entry level CPA. This means you're ready to be a CPA. So we need to make sure that you really are there. And so, really the benefit to yourself is not to rush yourself through this. Make sure you are, getting the proper exposure, and you're really able to master those particular skill set before you put yourself at the level 2. We definitely will be looking for that, and if we don't see that, we will be, asking you for more information. So just to ensure that your report is being processed quickly and efficiently, and reduce the number of back and forth that we have to do, it would be really great to ensure that all of that information is there, and you are, telling us the information we need to know, as well as really clear and illustrative examples will be very helpful as well. Okay, so again, this is just another summary. Want to make sure that you're looking at 4 level 2s and 4 level 1s. Okay. So I just want to quickly review the reporting process. I think there's some confusion as well for students in terms of, when do I really need to report? So every 6 months, every student is required to prepare an experience report in PERT. Okay, so this is what we call the self-assessment that you do. So you take a look and at, what you've done in the last 6 months and where are you at, and prepare a report in PERT on those 6 months of experience. And you will need to send that report to your supervisor, have them verify the work that you've put down, that you've done there. So we do need the supervisor to verify the accuracy of the task that you've listed that you have actually performed. And after you've done that, after the supervisor has actually verified, then you'd meet with your mentor at that time and discuss your progress. Where are you on track? Where are you not on track? If you're not on track on something, what are some of the action plan that you can put together to make sure that, you're on track, you get back on track. And then make sure you do remember after you meet with your mentor that you document those meetings in PERT. That's the other thing that we look at. So one of your requirements as a student is that you're having these semi-annual meetings with your mentor, and we do need to see evidence of it to ensure that those are happening. And so make sure that you remember that very, very important step of documenting it in PERT. So you do this on a 6-month basis. But in addition to that, at the 12-month mark, or when you think you're all done, or even when you have to change your job, so you've moved on to a different job or you got promoted, we also need you to then submit that experience report to CPA Ontario so that we can actually review and actually approve that experience and recognize it for you. Okay, so we needed you to do everything you do every 6 months, but in addition to that, at the 12-month mark, or when you're all done, you need to submit that experience report to CPA Ontario as well, or when you have a change of job. Okay. All right, so now I want to move on to step 3, which is mapping your key job duties to the competency categories. So now that you understand what the experience requirements are, what all the different competency categories are, now you need to take a look at the job that you do. Okay, so I have an example here I want to go through with you. So take, for example, your financial analyst. So think about what your main job duties are. So in this example, this particular financial analyst would every month prepare income statements submitted to their head office, which then gets included in the consolidated financial statements. Sorry, just there. And every month, they also prepare journal entries. And for the rest of the month, they prepare analysis for their various different product lines and customer segments. They also prepare parts of the management reporting package, and they would present that to their senior management. And they also are involved in the annual budget, the quarterly forecast, as well as monthly variance analysis. So these are the 5 main duties that this person has. And I think it's very important that you focus on your main responsibilities that you do, okay, and make a list of those. Then the next thing to do is to think about, okay, how do they map to the competencies? So we're looking at all those 6 competency area on that wheel and each of the sub-competencies. So let's take, for instance, the first job responsibility, which is financial statements or preparing financial statements. So here's some of the things to think about is that, well, these income statements are being prepared for head office. Like who gets these income statements? Who are the users at the end of the day for these particular statements that you're working on? So in this case, it's head office, They get included in their consolidated financial, as part of the consolidated financial statements. It's also shareholders and the investor relations department who actually will be using these financial statements. They're put on your company website. And so all these show that, they are definitely external users. There is a difference between financial statements are prepared for internal users as well as or external users. And the other clue as well is that these income statements are being prepared in accordance with IFRS. So all of these point to the fact that this maps really well to the financial reporting category. Okay, so that's how the thought process you would go through. The next one is journal entries. So here these journal entries are being prepared in accordance with IFRS. And journal entries are also something that you would find under the financial reporting competency area. So it's actually the second one there. So this also says, okay, so again, this is falling under the financial reporting area. Then let's move on to analysis and management reports. So those are the other two job functions that this particular financial analyst works on. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at these profitability reports. They're being created, they're being segmented by product line and customer segment. You're not using IFRS when you're doing this type of analysis, and you're able to really try and dice and slice these data in different ways. And the reason why you're doing all of this, at the end of the day, it really is so that internal senior management would use this information to make decisions. Okay, so this lends and correlates very well to management accounting. Okay, so that's where you would map this to. And then last job function is budgeting, forecasting, and variance analysis. So again, when you're looking at budgeting, forecasting, that's very much traditional management accounting type of activities. And these are things that you would have probably come across when you were taking your management accounting courses as well. And the main users of these types of reports that you're going to get at the end would be internal management. So all these point very well that this is under management accounting, or maps very well to management accounting. So in summation, you've got financial statements falls under financial reporting, journal entries, financial reporting, analysis, management accounting, management reporting, management accounting, budgeting and forecasting, also management accounting. So the other thing then is to kind of step back and think about the time. How much time do you spend on these activity in total? So you can see some of the estimate here. And then if you can see here that 1 and 2 really sums up to be about 40% of your time, and then 3, 4, and 5 is about 60% of your time. So most of your time is being spent in the management accounting area. So that is likely where your depth is going to be. Your depth is going to be management accounting, your breadth is going to be in financial reporting, and your core will be a combination of financial reporting and management accounting. Okay, so it's really important that you do this kind of thinking ahead of time. This gives you the focus, the direction to focus on when you're preparing your experience report. So I'm going to, before I go to the next step, maybe I should just quickly go through this. So here's some of the things that may help you further. If you're not familiar with what each of these sub-competencies, what the definitions are, we definitely have a document, a PDF that will help you, and you will see this in this link here. You can click on the link and it'll load up the document for you. If the link doesn't work, you can copy and paste the link onto your browser and it should take you right there. The other place to look at is when you're in PERT, you'll see a little blue circle with a white question mark in it. You can click on that as well, and that'll open up to these definitions for you, and that'll help you map what your key job functions are to where you should be reporting it on your experience report. Okay.
Okay, fam, we have a few more questions. So the first one we'll talk about is prior experience. So I've had quite a few questions about prior experience. Question 1 was, what if your prior experience comes from a different job? can you still have that counted towards your practical experience?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, in terms of these exit requirements that we've reviewed, it could be one job, or it could be a combination of different jobs that would allow you to meet all the exit requirements. It doesn't have to come from the same job, and so you just need to know, what the exit requirements are. You have to take a look at what you're currently doing or what you've done in the past. Which sub-competency is it meeting? How well is it meeting it? Is it a level 1? Is it a level 2? And that way you can determine what you're missing, what the gaps are, and continue to work on those through the jobs that you have. So it could be one or multiple jobs.
And how much prior experience will count towards the total 30-month duration requirement?
So we do have a limit there. It's only 12, up to 12, and you can only claim any prior experience that are at least 3 months in duration, and they have to also, at the very minimum, meet at least one level 1 in one of your sub-competencies, one of those 20 sub-competencies.
So we have another question here from a student who was in a pre-approved program route and has now changed jobs into the EV, and is asking, how does it work? How does the student report if they were if earlier they were in a pre-approved program route and they've now switched to experience verification?
So you definitely want to close out your PPR experience in a pre-approved program route by submitting, by doing an experience report to self-assess where you're at. Then you want to submit that to CPA Ontario. And then once you've done that and we've closed out that particular experience, then you can submit your new job into us, and we can pre-assess it at that time to make sure that it's meeting the requirements for us to continue recognizing your experience. And then once we do, you will just continue with your reporting requirements.
Excellent. So when we're talking about changing jobs, what experience can actually count towards practical experience? Talking internships, co-ops, secondments?
Yeah, for sure. Anything that's a paid employment would definitely count as long as they're meeting one of these sub-competencies. So there's certain rules that we have. So you want to make sure that the job that you have does meet those. And that's why it's very important that you submit a pre-assessment. So we do require that you submit a pre-assessment into us. We do have something on our website that allows you to know what the entrance requirements are to meet the pre-assessment. And so if you can self-assess, there's a tool for you to self-assess to make sure it does, then you can submit it in. We can officially let you know if your job is meeting those requirements, and then we can set you on your way.
So you have 2 more questions. If we self-assess ourselves at a level 1, but the reviewer, when doing the pre-assessment, disagrees and says it's a level 0, which level is the final level, the final decision?
Definitely the reviewer, because at the end of the day, one of the requirements of practical experience is that you do need to have your experience professionally assessed. So that means CPA Ontario will be the one that will be the final approver in terms of whether we would recognize that experience or not. So you need to make sure that your reviewer it agrees with you. And so that's why it's really important that you understand what the requirements are, you understand what the reviewer is looking for, and you make sure that you're providing all that information for us.
Sorry, we just had an extra question which I think is very relevant for this one. How do I edit my report? So if I want to make changes or fix mistakes, can I edit my report?
Yeah, I think if the report is not in a verified state, then you're definitely able to go in there and edit your report. If you're having trouble with that, you can definitely send us a question at practicalexperience at cpaontario.ca, and we'd be happy to schedule a walkthrough with you, or we can even send you some steps on how to do it. You can also consult the EVR guide for EVR students. It's more or less a user guide, and there's lots of screenshots in there and everything, and it'll walk you through what you need to know.
Excellent. And as a reminder, that guide is part of your handouts today, so you can download that really easily. So you can edit reports in a verified status?
Yes.
Wonderful. And the last question before we let you continue, as a Core 1 candidate, can I start reporting in PERT now, even if I fall at level 0 for most things?
So if you're in Core 1 and you have a job where you have at least one sub-competency at a level 1 or potential for it to get to a level 1 within the 12-month mark, then you can submit your job for us to pre-assess and we can let you know for sure. And if it does meet our entrance requirements, you can definitely begin to report that. Now you do have to have 2 level 1s in order to go beyond the 12-month mark. Okay, so we look for at least one level 1 in your first 12 months, and then we look at that point to see if you have any potential for a second level 1 in the job that you have. And if you don't, we'll let you know that your experience will likely be maxed, capped at the 12th month, and that you probably would want to start looking or asking for additional responsibilities to allow you to develop a second level 1 before we can continue to recognize that experience beyond the 12-month mark.
Thank you, Fan.
Okay, so I'm going to continue. Thank you again for all the questions. So now is step 4, which is knowing what CPA Ontario's expectations are. So this is really important for you to know. This way you can make sure your experience report is definitely providing the information that we need to know. And able to agree with you in terms of your demonstration of those particular competencies. So the very first thing I want to point you to is we do have a guide, and it's like a 2-pager guide. It's very useful. If you haven't seen it yet, I really advise you to take a look at this. It's called Guide to Completing Experience Verification Report, and it takes you through the whole process in terms of, overall, what does it look like, when do you submit a report, and what's really, really useful, I find, is that there's actually a completion checklist in part of this PDF. And it really is, after you've finished doing your experience report, there are things for you to go over to see, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that? And this will help you ensure that you've got a completed report before you send it into CPA Ontario for us to look at. And of course, the reason why, we want to do this is to help you so that you are submitting all the information we need, and this way we can process it very quickly because we have all the information at our fingertips and we don't need to go back and forth with you to get more information. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, please have a look at it. I think you'll find it very useful. Okay, so other things to keep in mind when you're preparing an experience report. Make sure that you are using I statements. We don't want to see any we or our type of statements, because in those cases, we don't know if you actually did it or which part you did or which part somebody else did and it wasn't you. So it's not clear to us if you don't use I statements. So make sure you do in describing what you do, and really reporting to us that you're demonstrating these particular sub-competencies. We need to know that it's you that's demonstrating this, not your department or your team. Okay, so to that, the only other thing too is, again, that's why it's so important, that previous exercise I took you to, that you really sit down and write down what your key responsibilities are, see how it maps to the sub-competencies, and then just focus on developing or demonstrating those particular sub-competencies and reporting it to us. So, in that financial analyst job that we went over, the person did not have any responsibilities when it comes to tax. So we really would not expect to see that your experience report, when you submit it to us, would have tax responsibilities on there or tax sub-competencies on there, okay? Because it's not what you've done in this particular role. If you had another role that had that, by all means, report it at that point. We have seen many reports where students feel that they need to report on every sub-competency, so they would actually go and talk about all 20 of it. Okay, so you don't need to do that, and that'll help you to focus on the ones that you need to focus on and make sure that you are, working on those, and make sure you're providing us very good examples on how you're demonstrating those. And hopefully that'll cut down your time in terms of preparing your report as well. And so I talked about the examples, so making sure that, they're very good examples. They do demonstrate, clearly demonstrate to us that you are demonstrating that particular competency, as well that it's consistent. And also keep in mind that the example should be complex enough, especially if you want to say that, hey, I'm demonstrating at a 2. You want to make sure that your example includes information about its complexity, so that we can see that, yeah, this really supports the 2, and also that, you were doing it independently as well. So we do need those key criteria being as part of your examples. The other thing too to note is that it's something we call double dipping. So we really want you to think about, when you're doing this particular task, which sub-competency are you really hitting? I.e., what is the purpose or objective of that particular task? And so if it's more that you're preparing financial statements because it's going to be in your annual report that you're going to be giving out to your stakeholders, then we would definitely say that would be hitting the financial reporting sub-competency of being able to prepare financial statements. And we really wouldn't want to be seeing that, okay, so that is also, hitting, you're using that same example to hit something, let's say you're preparing the tax return or something. Okay, so we really, really want to make sure that we're looking at what is the objective or purpose of that particular task you do and making sure that it's mapping to that appropriate competency. Another helpful hint is that, many times the competency itself, the requirement for demonstrating that, has multiple parts. And they've got the word plus to sort of separate these parts. And so you want to make sure you're hitting all those parts. So I have an example for you here. So management accounting number 2, so competency number 2, is about planning, budgeting, and forecasting. So for a level 1, it says you need to analyze or prepare information inputs for operational plans, budgets, and forecasts, plus you need to be able to explain or calculate any operational plans, budgets, and forecasts. Plus, you need to also explain or calculate variances. So you have to do all 3 of these things. So in this example here, this particular student, obviously, had input in terms of the inputs going into the budget. They also analyze all the sales data. They discuss the numbers with, the purchasing department and the general manager, and they then use the information and they prepared the budget. Okay, and that's it. It ended there. So when we go back and we look at the definitions, we definitely see that, they did part 1. They actually did part 2, but there was nothing about explaining or calculating variances. So because there's nothing there and that part is not met, it does not satisfy the definition for a level 1 proficiency. Okay, so that was that part about that. I don't know if Beth would like me to pause for a few more questions.
Yeah, we have a few questions. Okay. They're a bit more general, though.
Okay.
But I think they're good ones. I think everyone would need to know this information. So first we'll talk about taking a break when you're reporting on your practical experience. So I've had a few questions from students who are returning to study, or maybe they're going on maternity leave or taking a leave of absence for whatever reason. What are the requirements around reporting while you're not actually working or developing your experience?
So I definitely would recommend that before you leave, you should always wrap up and report on whatever outstanding period that is. Even if it was a month ago, you had already done an experience report, you want to do another one just to capture that particular month before you go. Okay, and that report then, after you've got it verified by your supervisor, you've met with your mentor, then you want to submit that to CPA Ontario, to us, so that we can review it and then we can recognize that time and those competencies up to that point. Okay, then during the leave, you won't have any reporting. Once you come back, again, you then should start a new experience report, or you can make a copy of the last one you had and build on that. And then you wait 6 months from that point and you would do another self-assessment, you get it verified, you have your mentor meeting. You don't need to be reporting that to us at that time, unless of course you got a new job, in which case you need to send us a pre-assessment for that particular new job to make sure then you can continue reporting that job. And then you just do a self-assessment until you're all done, then you send it in to us and we then would finish off the entire file.
So better safe than sorry. Submit your experience if you don't know what your situation is going to be, right?
You should always do a self-assessment and make sure that your supervisor's verified it and you've got a mentor review attached with it. It's always good to do it timely because, especially if you're going to be off for a year, if you're going on mat leave or something, it's just too long at that time after you come back and try to catch up. You would have forgotten a lot of the things that you've worked on, and so maybe your supervisor as well. And so you're not getting too much value out of it out of it if you don't do it right away. So being timely is very, very important, and it will add a lot of value in terms of your personal development as well.
So if we just talk about the type of assessment, so we have the change of job assessment. That would be if you're not sure if you're returning to your work, correct?
Yeah, so if you change of job is if you got a promotion or if you're going back to school after a co-op work term, then you want to say I'm submitting this for a change of job purposes, or if you got a new opportunity that you're going to, or even if you got a promotion, or if you're changing pathway, you went from pre-approved program to experience verification or vice versa. So all those times you should really report it as a change of job. And other times it might be there's this category called student requested. So there even is that, like if you're saying, look, you know, I'm going on mat leave and I just want to report what I've got up to this point. So it would be, you know, a student requested assessment. Or, you know, it's been a while because, you know, we require you to report 12 months and then we say, hey, you don't actually need to report to us again until you're all done. So maybe, you know, it's been a while since you reported to us at CPA Ontario. You're also still continuing to do your self-assessment, but you might be curious as to, you know, hey, am I on the right track? So you may want to send in an assessment at that time, just because, you know, it's been, you know, maybe 18 months and you're not sure you've met the exit requirements yet, and you want to have another assessment done so that we can give you some feedback. So that would also be another good reason.
Excellent. So just talking about the timeline, you mentioned, you know, 12-month report and maybe you get to 18 months. Can we just review that timeline again? We've had a few questions around what do I need to do after I have my per effective date? When's the next time I need to update my reports? And specifically, when do I submit my reports through an assessment to CPA Ontario? So I know you covered this already, but I wonder if we can go back to that.
Yeah, so in general, if you've only got no prior experience, sorry, I'm kind of just backtracking through all my slides here. So in general, what we want to see is that there is a requirement that every student has to do a self-assessment on a semi-annual basis. So, and that would likely start with your per effective date, the date that your current job begins. From that point on, every 6 months, you should be doing a self-assessment. You get that assessment, that report verified by your supervisor. You would then meet with your mentor, and then you would document the meeting in PERT, okay? And then at 12 months from the start of your current experience, we definitely want you to, in addition to doing what you do on a semi-annual basis, you also want to send in that report to CPA Ontario for a professional assessment. Okay. Now, if you had prior experience, you need to submit that as a professional assessment for sure, because we want, so let's say you first of all, you have to have a current job that's relevant, that meets the entrance requirements. So you, in PERT, you got a per effective date, we've approved your pre-assessment. At that time, you can go into PERT and create a prior experience report, and you can claim your prior experience report. And that report, you don't need to submit. It does have to go to the supervisor where you had worked previously to verify, but you won't need to submit that to your mentor. You can then, after the supervisor has reviewed that report, you can then submit it directly to us here at CPA Ontario. We would assess that report and see what we're able to recognize for that prior experience. And once you have that, your reviewer will tell you at that point when your next review is, right? Because let's say you had 6 months of prior, then your 12-month report would be another 6 months of your current, and we'd like you to send something in to us. But your reviewer will let you know. So just read your results of your prior report that CPA Ontario has assessed, and they will tell you what your next steps are.
Thanks, Van. So we'll let you get back to the presentation. I just wanted to mention that keep your questions coming. We are answering most of them. If we don't get to answer your question throughout the presentation, we will respond to you at least as soon as possible after the webinar through your email.
Yeah, so I'm almost done, and so we might have some more time after this. So what I want to point you to right now are some resources that we have for you that you'll find very useful. So I think I've already talked about the guide to completing experience verification reports. So definitely that's the one with the checklist that has like some really great questions in the checklist to ask yourself and make sure you've got everything you need and you've looked at everything or you considered everything you need to consider. So highly recommend that one. The second one is a video that we have put together on technical competencies. So it does a much deeper dive than what I was able to cover today. And it actually really goes through financial reporting and management accounting, because many students get confused, what falls under financial reporting and what falls under management accounting. So I definitely recommend that video for you to take a look at as next step after this particular webinar. Then we did not focus on any of our enabling competencies, but we have another really great video on enabling competencies as well. So I definitely recommend that as your third step to do, is take a look at that one. I definitely see like the students who have seen these videos when they submit experience report into us, their reports are very well done and they're definitely hitting the mark, and we have very little back and forth that we have to do. So if you have a chance, please take a look at these videos. I think you'll find them super helpful. And then number 4 is it's really more an overview of all the practical experience competencies. I've kind of took you through that, but if you want a little bit more information or something to refer back to, that is a really good PDF for you to have a look at. And then lastly, again, all the definitions of each of those sub-competencies is in that last document there. Okay. So now finally, after all this, you are ready to prepare your report. Okay, so that's what that very last step is. So, before you even sit down and take a look at it, you just want to do a lot of these things ahead of time. Focus yourself, do some planning basically, and then that'll result in you getting through preparing your report much faster and also result in a much better reporting experience for you and also for us here at CPA Ontario, in order to be able to assist you and have less back and forth between us and you. Okay, so I have time now for more questions.
Yes, so these questions evolve around mentorship and your mentors. So we've had a few questions about what do I do if I need to change my mentor. So I'm wondering, Fan, if you're able to answer these questions. Otherwise, we can call in our experts as well. So the question is, I want to change my mentor. How do I find a new mentor?
Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if you guys know, but Beth actually manages our CPA Ontario mentorship program here in Ontario. And so I'm sure she will jump in too with these questions. Now, first of all, if you guys don't already know, we do have a mentorship email box. So anytime you're not sure about what to do in situations involving mentorship, you can definitely more than welcome to send us a question at
mentor@cpaontario.ca.
Beth is a lot more familiar with that mailbox than I am. So you can definitely do that. But yes, sometimes, it's not the right fit in terms of mentor. So we definitely, would, be okay with you saying, I need a new mentor, or I'm going to change mentor. Sometimes your mentor maybe just cannot continue with that role anymore. So there's definitely very good reasons for changing mentor, and that's definitely okay. What you do need to do is that you do have to let us know that you are changing your mentor. We do recommend that if possible, you have that final meeting with your current mentor, especially if you're between time that you're meeting with them, just so that you can finalize, everything up to that point with that mentor, and then you can start fresh with your new mentor. And it also gives you a really good, up-to-date sort of where you are, that you can then pass along to your new mentor. So you're not losing any of that, which is very, very important, right? If you do need help finding a mentor, we do have a mentor match portal that you can use to help find a mentor for you. So that's also a very good option to do as well. I'm going to see if Beth has anything else that she'd likes to add in to that as well.
Yeah, so that mentor match portal, if you do need access to it, just email mentor@cpaontario.ca, tell them your situation, and they'll be able to help guide you as the best steps, whether they can allow you access to the portal or even offer you a little bit more support than that. Fam, we have another question about mentorship. How do I document a mentor review in PERT? So we established you really should be having, or you need to have your mentor review at least twice within every 12 months. How do I document that mentor review?
Mm-hmm. And we do have a couple of ways where that can help you. One, which I actually think they're really, really cool, and so I hope you guys are using it, is we do have these PDF that we call them fact sheets, and they're like basically 3 steps on how to request a mentor review, and also how to document your mentor review afterwards. We usually they're available on our website. So if you go to CPA Ontario website, you go onto the practical experience area, we do have like a resource section. I do apologize. I know our resource section is really like a list of all the resources. We are working on, presenting that information in a more easy to find type of format. So we're working on that piece. But you can definitely, if you're stuck with anything, you can definitely go there as your first place to go to look for resources that will help you. We've tried really hard to come up with as many types of resources as possible to support you, but we do recognize that might be a bit of a challenge for you to find some of these things. So the other way that we're sending out the information as well is that Beth's team actually does send reminder emails out to all students about if you haven't yet had your mentor review meeting, or if it's been passed and you haven't done it, please remember to do so. And on those reminder emails, she does include attachments on how to request a mentor review, how to document it as well. So that's definitely there. So I'm going to let Beth talk about the actual steps themselves, but definitely in terms of guidance, we definitely have it on our website. We have it through the reminder emails that are sent out as well, and it's also in that EVR guide or user guide for EVR students, so it's there as well.
Thanks, Van. So yes, you must document your mentor reviews in the Practical Experience Reporting tool, in PERT. In PERT, you have tabs that go across the top of your screen. One of them is the Mentor Reviews tab. You open that up, and if you have verified reports and you don't have any open mentor reviews at the moment, you will be able to simply click Request Review. That will send an email to your mentor saying that you have requested a review for a specific date. Now, if you don't have any experience reports in verified status, you will not be able to do this. And that is because your mentor review is to review your experience reports to date. So make sure you have an updated experience report in verified status, and you will be able to request a mentor review. So as I said, mentor reviews must be reported in PERT. If you want to meet with your mentor for another reason, whether it's just a catch-up or to talk about other things but not necessarily your experience report, you are more than welcome to have a mentor meeting with them, and this does not have to be reported in PERT. So you can have as many of those as you want between you and your mentor, as long as you have reported a formal mentor review in PERT twice within every 12 months of experience. And we did get another question about what if I missed my mentor review. So as I said, you must have 2 mentor reviews for every 12 months of experience in PERT. If you get over the 12-month mark and you only have 1 mentor review reported in PERT, you will lose 30 days of duration. If you're at the 7-month mark and you have not done a mentor review at the 6-month mark, that's okay, because the requirement is 2 mentor reviews for every 12 months. So if you're at the 7th month mark, I recommend you have a mentor review as soon as possible so that you can have another mentor review around the 11th, 12th month mark. Remember, if your reviews are too close, these will be questioned. Are you reviewing your experience? Are you just repeating another mentor review? That will be questioned. So make sure those reviews are far enough apart to have actually talked about experience gained.
Yeah, I think what I want to add on to that, the reason why there's these requirements is because we think it's really important that students get timely feedback about their progress. And if their progress isn't going on track, they have enough time to actually get themselves back on track with the help of a mentor, of course, to guide you. And so that's why, it's important to space these meetings out. Now, the semi-annual, the reason why we're saying semi-annual is just to give some flexibility to say that at the very least there should be 2 feedback sessions, and they should be spaced apart sufficiently so the students getting timely feedback and have enough time to actually put that feedback into action. So keep that in mind. So if you're having a meeting at the 10th month mark and then one at the 12th month mark, are you really, able to really fully utilize those feedback sessions, right? So it's definitely not a, I'm just going to meet for the heck of meeting. It really is, I want to get valuable feedback from somebody who's already a CPA to help me in terms of my journey to my CPA designation, right? So that's really what the premise of all of these mentor meetings are all about.
Thanks, Fan. I think we have time for 2 more questions. So this question is around missed requirements. What if I miss my 12-month assessment? So that's the 12-month assessment that you're required to submit your experience reports to CPA Ontario for review. What happens if you miss that one?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's really important that you stay on top of these reporting deadlines, because it's really important that you're getting that feedback to make sure that you're on track. So if you missed it and you recognize now that you did, so I would say right away, send something in. Go through the process, do your self-assessment, get it verified by your supervisor, meet with your mentor, discuss it, send it in to CPA Ontario so that we can assess it, because we want to tell you whether you're on track or not. And if not, you want to have enough time to be able to put action plans together and implement those and execute them. Okay, so now keep in mind then, you can only claim up to the 12 months of experience, right? Because that's the 12 months. So if it took you 18 months in order to report the 12 month, then what you're essentially losing is just time that you're not able to report, and we won't be able to recognize afterwards because you're not reporting on a timely basis. So there are some reporting consequences that you want to keep in mind, because again, the whole reason why we have all of this put into place is because we want to ensure that you're getting timely feedback and you're getting feedback that's going to help you in terms of your progression.
Okay, that brings us to 1 o'clock, the end of this webinar. We're going to keep the questions box open for a few more minutes, so send your questions through. If we do not get to answer them immediately, we will answer them as soon as possible through your email. I want to thank you, Fan, for your wonderful webinar. We've already got lots of requests for a recording. There will be a recording available. It will be up in the practical experience page on the website as soon as it has been processed.
Okay, thank you everyone, and have a great afternoon.